Settle down now, boys. Per usual, as we kick off an episode, you feel a little bit of pressure and tension easing up off your shoulders. Things are running smoothly now. All right, we're talking fights. You guys know what we're doing here. We're starting at the bottom of this card. We're working our way up towards the top. We're talking betting lines. We are talking how these fights are going to play out. This is an exciting fight card. UFC Saudi Arabia. I know that we lost the initial main event matchup between Khamzat Chimaev and Robert Whittaker, but how smoothly did that work? As Aliskerov was initially supposed to be fighting just a week prior to this event. So he's peaking right up to the date. It works out perfectly. This isn't an Aliskerov on short notice. I mean, this is a real deal Aliskerov taking on Robert Whittaker. So we get to see what Aliskerov is about. Obviously, he's a very highly regarded up-and-comer in the fight game. His only loss came by way of Khamzat Chimaev. Now, the other fights that fell off this card that I was a little disappointed about, I think it's worth mentioning. We did lose Montel Jackson versus Farid Basharat, and Basharat had to withdraw from that fight. And that's a shame for Montel Jackson because that dude just cannot stay active in the fight game. He was looking to do his one per year type of fight, and then look what happened to him. His opponent pulled out. That's why you need to stay more active in general. Besides that, we did lose Melsik Bagdasaryan, who was supposed to be taking on Muhammad Naimov. That's a fight I'm disappointed we lost as well. And I am a little disappointed that Ihor Potieria had to pull out with this fight against Shara Magomedov. But on a positive note there, Shara Magomedov gets a new opponent in Lutterbach. So at least we get to see Magomedov perform once again. And you got to be pumped about the co-main event. Neither guy is going to be talking a lot going into this fight, but these are two fighters that deliver in the cage. Two mammoth heavyweight fighters representing Russia, both ranked in the top 5. Alexander Volkov taking on Sergey Pavlovich. I'm very excited for that fight as well. All right, guys. So we're going to jump into the card here in 1 second. Just got to let you guys know we have been running hot, coming off a clean sweep from UFC Vegas 93. And if you guys want to work with me for my official plays, just always remember you guys can reach out to me through Instagram, Twitter, or shoot me an email. I got all that scrolling below or posted below in one way or another. Shoot me a message and I can give you further details on that. And you guys know we are powered by BetUS. If you sign up through the link in the description of this video, you're going to get a 125% match on your first 3 deposits with BetUS. And then I have a gift waiting for you guys as well. So let me know if you do sign up through that link, please. All right, guys. So with that all being said, we're going to be jumping into the first fight of the card. Let's go slide over there.
Welcome to the show. This is the MMA fortune teller. Yeah.
The MMA fortune teller.
The teller.
Kicking the card off, we have possibly the most anticipated fight on the card. Long Xiao taking on Chang Ho Lee. This is for the winner of the road to UFC's bantamweight bracket. And, you know, obviously I'm poking some fun as I say this is one of the most anticipated fights because it's obviously the least anticipated fight. But if you're a hardcore fight fan like I am, the more you dive into this fight, the more you're rewatching tape and you know what's on the line for both men, it does make the fight exciting. So I am anticipating this fight. Now, Long Xiao comes off 2 decision victories on the road to UFC. In fact, he's on a 4-fight winning streak since that loss he took to Christian Quinoez, a decision loss on Dana White's Contender Series. Obviously, let a huge opportunity slip through his grasp, but he was very young at the time. That was 3 years ago. He was 23 years old. And I like the fact that he's just 26 because there's a lot more room for growth in his game. All right, because I'm not impressed with what I'm seeing from either fighters. I'm not even really sure if these guys are UFC caliber fighters, to be honest. But you understand what the UFC is trying to do as far as bringing in fighters from that part of the world and trying to grow the sport over there and whatnot. Or I don't even know if you want to say grow the sport, but you know, obviously from that part of the world, a lot of the younger talent is going to ONE FC and whatnot. So the UFC is trying to make a presence over there. You understand what's going on. I'm not so sure either of these fighters are UFC caliber. But Long will have more time to turn into potentially a legitimate UFC fighter. All right, so to this matchup here, it's a very close fight. What I like about Long Xiao is he's active with his striking. In his most recent fight, he did a good job, I thought, for the most part, of stuffing takedowns from the Japanese fighter, Kamikubo, who was continuously pressing forward and pressuring him. And I like Long Xiao's style of fighting for the judges' criteria these days. Right, he's looking to stuff takedowns. He's looking to create space, and he's looking to throw volume at you. Now, not a lot of pop on his shots, and Technically, I'm not high on his striking. It's not crisp. His jabs are kind of a little wobbly, but he's active with his striking. And I think that he could use those skills to outpoint Ho Lee here. Ho Lee, I think, will be the fighter that kind of pushes the grappling a little bit more so. You think about Shang Ho Lee's last fight against, excuse me on the name here, Zawipasa. That was a fight where he got a third round finish, but he was losing that fight. Okay, so he was losing that fight. There was only a minute and a half left, and he ended up flattening him out and getting that TKO. By the way, you could pull up all these fights. If you go on YouTube and you search them, TVN Sports posts all these fights. They're nice, clear, and there's good quality on them. So if you guys want to go recap these fights for yourself, you guys can see what I'm talking about. So that's one good thing. If you weren't already keeping up with the show. But he did get a comeback victory in that fight, but he was down in the scorecards. He was getting out grappled in that fight, and he was kind of entertaining the grappling as well. And I don't know, as I was watching that fight between those two men, and then I'm watching Long Xiao fight against Kamikubo, I feel like those fighters, just from what I'm seeing on tape, they look to be a little bit of a higher quality fighters, in my opinion. I don't know. I think even Kamikubo would get the better of the other two fighters there on that side of the bracket. I think there's potential for that. Long Xiao, 26 years old and already has 34 professional fights, so good amount of experience for him there. And I guess you guys know which way I'm going with this. And let me just also mention another aspect I like for Long Xiao is that he has a lot more professional fight experience, even though it's against low-level talent. He's in the cage very often. He's going to feel very comfortable in there. And I like the fact that he fought on Dana White's Contender Series as well, right? We mentioned that Christian Quinoa's fight. So he's been on a bigger stage, you could say, before. And Christian Quinoa is a fighter that got a contract, got into the UFC, and actually, I believe, had a knockout victory in his UFC debut. He's since lost 2 fights, but one against Kyung Ho Kang, I believe it was, and then the other one against a little bit of an upper echelon fighter in Ioni Barcelos. So take Quinoa's for what you will, but in regards to these fighters, it's a step up. I am going with Long Xiao to win this fight. I'm going to say that he wins a decision. We head over to the betting line. Over at BetUS, Long Xiao opened up as a -105. He was a very minuscule underdog. It was essentially pick'em odds, which it almost still is essentially pick'em odds, but we've seen slight action coming towards Long Xiao's way. He's now a -130 over at BetUS. So it seems that the masses are in agreement with what I'm seeing. And there was probably some decent value at -105 on him. And even at -130, I think you could potentially argue there's some value there. It's a close fight. I like Long Xiao in this matchup, and even at -130, it's a relatively close line. In the middleweight division, in steps Sedriques Dumas to replace Abu Azaitar, taking on Denis Tiuliulin. So do understand that Dumas comes into this fight on short notice, traveling all the way there to Saudi Arabia. Besides that, he's a fighter. I think he was just mentioning recently that he was high going into one of his fights. I know this is a dude that has a lot going on outside the cage as well. So it's kind of hard to back him at times because he's a fighter that has a lot of moving parts, if you will, maybe some baggage behind him. And he's had some up and down type of performances. He's coming off a knockout loss against Nursultan Rozaboyev. He was caught in the first round in just over 3 minutes. So he does come into this fight off a knockout loss. Denis Tiuliulin is a fighter that does throw heat. Okay, he's not a high caliber fighter to say the least, but he's a fighter that does throw heat. He's willing to go to war. He's decently well-rounded, kind of has that herky-jerky type of style. He's a fighter that's trained with the best of them. I know he's put in a lot of time. He's put a lot of time in over at in Vegas before. He's trained with big-name fighters. I don't know if he was preparing in Vegas for this camp here, but he's a dude that surrounds himself with legitimate fighters. His back is up against the wall. If he loses this fight, without a doubt, it's the last time that we see him in the UFC. I would say that pretty comfortably, being the fact that he's 36 years old, that if he loses this fight, he will be on a 1, 2, 3, 4 fight losing streak. And then even really, he would have lost 5 out of his last 6 with the only victory over Jamie Pickett, a fighter that's not with the UFC anymore, right? So a fighter that kind of just survived in the UFC as long as he did because he was kind of a fun fighter and took some short notice fights, and the UFC rewarded him with more opportunities. But listen, I want to pick Denis Tiuliulin to win this fight because I think he has some things going for himself. But the thing is Sedriques Dumas, when he does show up, he's had some pretty impressive performances. I thought he looked good on Dana White's Contender Series for as long as that fight lasted. Got the finish there. Thought he looked good against Cody Brundage, and Cody Brundage has been looking better since that fight as well, so it kind of puts a little bit more merit into that victory. I mean, I have the question marks about this dude, but if he shows up, he's the younger fighter. I think he's more talented at this point in time. I mean, he's hitting the tire with the, what are those, Bapes? I don't know what those are. If any of you sneakerheads could probably tell me, but those look like Bapes. It reminds me when I was in school, these dudes, they were like fake looking Air Forces. I don't know why he's rocking those in the gym. Throw some Air Maxes on, throw some trainers on. But the dude does have some skills, and he's shown some growth with his wrestling too, right? He was a dude that was kind of controlling Cody Brundage down in the mat. So, yeah, and Cody Brundage looked actually decent against Bo Nickel in those early grappling exchanges. And then even at range, as they're striking, Dumas will have the speed advantage. He has a much higher ceiling as a fighter, I would say. We will still see more from him. He's 28 years old. We'll see how he looks by the time he's 30, 31, if he's still hanging around in the UFC. Because if he loses this fight, or if he loses one more, if he gets another opportunity, he'll be gone as well. But I'm going to take Sedriques Dumas. It's a newer fight on the card, so you're not going to see a lot of, or you might see some of your books a little slow at the line or whatnot. But from what we're seeing Sedriques Dumas as high as a minus 265 favorite and as low as a minus 190 in that range. And we've also seen some action coming in on it, even at the high line of 250, 265. Maybe he settles in around a 280, 290 in that case. And even not just in that case, even with the line even lower, even if Dumas was a minus 220, I still am not a fan of that line. I think that the value is on Denis Tiuliulin, okay, at dog odds. And even as low of dog odds as we see, even at plus 160, which he varies from plus 160 to 210, I think the value is on Denis Tiuliulin. So let me be very clear for anyone that gets a little frustrated and doesn't understand what I'm trying to say or who I'm picking. I'm slightly leaning towards Dumas getting the job done here, but I do not like the betting line next to his name, and I think the value is on Denis Tiuliulin with the steep line that's out there. Again, as high as a plus 205 underdog, the value is on Tiuliulin, but it's hard to back him. He's just not the most talented fighter. In the light heavyweight division, we got Magomed Gadzhiyasulov taking on Brendson Ribeiro. Both these fighters initially coming from Dana White's Contender Series to the UFC. Now, Ribeiro has already had an opportunity to fight in the octagon, and it was a horrible night for him. Got knocked out in just over a minute and a half against Zhang Mingyang. But remember, we knew going into that fight that either man was going to get knocked out. Okay, either man was going to get knocked out. There was no question about that. Both of those fighters entertain a brawl. They're willing to go out on their shields, and Ribeiro was the fighter that went down with his shield that day. Now, even at just 27 years old, I do not expect Brendson Ribeiro to ever be some fine-tuned, methodical fighter in the UFC. I know that he has some striking skills and whatnot. I'm not saying that he's completely lacking skills there, but this guy is just a brawler. He's a warrior. And I think that he's the type of dude that's going to go out there, either knock his opponent out or get knocked out. And that's not a bad thing for longevity of fighting in the UFC, because even if he takes a good amount of losses, the UFC is going to give him a lot more opportunities. Okay, obviously you have to get a little W here or there, but you get a little bit more flexibility with that type of fighting style. And now this is a tough matchup for him because Magomed Gadzhiyasulov, I think he's the real deal. He's 8-0. He's undefeated. If you guys remember, we were breaking down tape on him leading up to that Dana White's Contender Series fight. He was throwing Anthony Pettis Showtime kicks off the side of the cage. He's a good striker, great frame for the division, solid athlete. He also has solid grappling skills, good offensive grappling skills. So he can hurt you in a lot of different ways. Now, the fight he had against Jose Medina, the Bolivian fighter, if you guys remember, he absolutely beat him down in that fight, but Medina was so damn tough. All right, he was never willing to look for a way out of that fight. And the UFC actually gave Medina a contract. All right, so Medina got a contract to the UFC as well. He's a cool dude. If you remember his press conference where he was cracking open the howler and taking sips, well, he was excited that he got a UFC contract there. So, but he was outmatched. Let's be very clear. He was outmatched. Gadzhiyasulov showed to be a serious fighter, in my opinion, and a fighter that we have to keep an eye on moving forward. Has a lot more to prove. Just 30 years old with just 8 pro fights. That's fine, though. In the light heavyweight division, he has plenty of time to peak as a fighter. And this is a good fight for him as far as just getting that octagon experience, going out there and getting a W, because yes, I do have Gadzhiyasulov getting the W here. And I think he's going to get a finish in this fight. I do. Now, he's a fighter that has finished 5 of his 8 victories. He's not a stranger to going to a decision, and we've seen, in that last fight we talked about against Medina, we've seen him not be able to find that finish, but I think Medina is just extremely tough. This is a different type of matchup. Ribeiro, not saying he's not tough, but he's a type of fighter that really puts himself out there, trying to find his own finish, and he's there to be finished. And we've seen a track record of him being finished. He's been finished in 5 of his 6 losses. So when he's losing, he's kind of getting crumpled up. Before we head over to the betting line, I'll play devil's advocate real quick. If Ribeiro can land a big shot and shake things up, obviously that would be his path to getting a victory, landing a huge shot in this fight. He will have almost a 6-inch reach advantage. I mean, he has some physical traits here, but he's got to land the mark. And I just think that Gadzhiyasulov will fight a cerebral fight. He'll fight a safe fight. Then he'll put himself in the right situations to eventually find that finish. I think that he maybe a ground and pound finish for Gadzhiyasulov. He opened up on BetUS as a -465, almost a 5-1 favorite. The line is trending the other way. I found this kind of interesting, to be honest. He's now a -375, but he's still a big-time favorite. But I think people are starting to feel, or people are feeling, that it's a little bit of a dangerous fight because of Ribeiro's style, that he's going to come across and look to get that finish, and it's a kill or be killed style, and maybe he lands that shot and he gets a W, and they think there's a little bit of value on these lines that are next to Ribeiro's name, which Ribeiro, people are snatching him up at +325, +300, +340. So people feel that there's value there. I kind of have a different outlook on the fight. I wouldn't want to touch Ribeiro. I think that he will be outmatched. I'm high on Gadzhiyasulov, and I think if anything, I like Gadzhiyasulov where the line is now, even as a parlay piece. With that high line, matching that up with something else, I think it's one of the safer fights on the card. I'm not really too worried about that offensive threat of Ribeiro. Gadzhiyasulov slows the fight down. He's methodical in there and makes smart decisions. And even if it does heat up, it'll be Gadzhiyasulov that will land that fight-ending strike. In the bantamweight division, we have Muin Gafurov taking on Kang. Now, Gafurov was supposed to be one of 2 Tajik fighters fighting on this card, but as we said in the intro, unfortunately, Muhammad Naimov's fight did fall through as Melsik Bagdasaryan had to pull out with a torn labrum. There's another pretty big name, I wouldn't say a big name, an up-and-coming fighter representing Tajikistan as well, right? The Tajik Eagle, that undefeated young prospect. So Tajikistan putting together some good fighters. Gafurov, we first got familiar with him when he fought on Dana White's Contender Series. He was coming into that fight as a hefty favorite against Chad Enhellinger. Now, his cardio kind of cost him in that fight. He slowed down, and Chad Enhellinger took over that fight. All right, so since then, he has gone 2-2. He had 2 victories over on the regional scene in LFA, and then he goes 0-2 to kick off his UFC career. Not the worst losses, though. He was finished by Said Nurmagomedov, who I'm very high on, and then he lost to John Castaneda via unanimous decision. Castaneda just defeated Kang as well, so that's a common opponent there, and he also had a unanimous decision over Kang. Gafurov is a fighter who's definitely getting in some solid work. That's one thing that stood out to me. He's training over at Syndicate MMA. When you're getting in work with Merab Dvalishvili, obviously you're getting fine-tuned in a phenomenal way. Your cardio is going to look better than ever. I mean, that guy's a machine. So I really hope they were getting in some serious work together because, like I said, one aspect of Gafurov's game that I haven't been such a fan of is his cardio. But he's young. The more professional experience he gets, the more he settles down into the UFC. If he continues to get opportunities, because if he does lose this, we might not see him in the UFC that much longer. In fact, if he loses this 0-3, he may get cut. But let's say he gets this victory, and the longer he's fighting in the UFC, he'll be more comfortable and he'll pace himself better as his fights go. He does have some pretty solid tools. Now, he is a Sambo combat champion. That's a pretty high accolade there. He has good power in his hands, so he obviously can grapple. Now, one thing that kind of had me scratching my head as I was rewatching that Castaneda fight, though, was that he was controlled for almost an entire round, almost 5 minutes of control time for John Castaneda there. And Gafurov is a fighter that's supposed to have those grappling skills. Really, when he's in the cage, though, seems like he favors just landing big shots, big strikes, throws them kind of loopy, they're kind of like hooks, wild hooks coming at you, but there's some good power in them. And on the other hand, Kang is going to be the more refined striker, throwing nice straight strikes down the pipe, nice jabs, nice straight strikes at range. And that's what he wants to do. He has a 5-inch reach advantage. If this fight is strictly a kickboxing match, I'm kind of leaning towards Kang's way, but still you got to be careful for the power that Gafurov possesses. All in all, though, I'm going to say that Muin Gafurov mixes things up, but I'm going to say that we see the best version of him. He's 28 years old right now. I think that he settles in this fight, and he's just the overall better mixed martial artist. I want to see him changing levels and just kind of mixing things up, and I think he gets a W here. So I will side with Gafurov. He opened up as a -115, which this fight was essentially dead, even pick 'em odds on BetUS. He's now at -150. So we see some pretty good action coming in on Gafurov, which could be a good thing there. I do like Gafurov, even at the -150 line, doesn't necessarily scare me away at the moment. You let that get up to -175, 180, you're pushing it. I think there's still some value on that Gafurov line, if you ask me. Give me the Tajik via decision, as Kang has proven to be pretty durable in there. Out of his 10 losses, 7 of them via decision. He's been pretty durable. I'll say Gafurov wins as they go to the scorecards. As we head over to the welterweight division, I'm going to let you guys know right off the rip, this fight's betting line is quite interesting, and it's had me scratching my head. It kind of puts me in a pickle for where I want to go with my pick. So let's dive into this fight. Rinat Fakhretdinov taking on Nicolas Dalby. Nicolas Dalby, 39 years old. You guys know I'm not high on fighters that are creeping up to their 40s, as I just had that official play cash on Miles Johns, as I faded Douglas Silva de Andrade, as he was just a day away from turning 39 years old. So I do like to fade older fighters, but Nicolas Dalby, I mean, he's looking better and better every time he steps in there. He just had a TKO finish over Gabriel Bonfim. Now, Gabriel is the Bonfim brother that I'm even higher on. Okay, that was a huge victory. I mean, he just showed that he's an absolute gladiator. It's just funny because I know that's Fakhretdinov's name, but when I think of a gladiator type of fighter, Dalby's one of those fighters that sticks out to me. And you guys remember, I used to refer that term to fighters like Robbie Lawler back in the day. It's just something about these types of fighters that are always game. They don't talk too much. They show up for battle. And Nicolas Dalby truly is one of those fighters, proving it right now more than ever. But to be this old and to be still performing the way that he does, I think this is a fighter that takes extremely good care of his body. All right, we've always seen that he comes into his fights in phenomenal shape. You see him here with Martin Kampmann. Martin Kampmann, for all you newer fans of the fight game, all you OGs, you definitely know who Martin Kampmann was. He was a fighter that welcomed Carlos Condit into the UFC when the UFC merged with the WEC. Martin Kampmann was a phenomenal striker, a fighter that I always love to watch, and he's also from Denmark. All right, so Dalby getting in work with him, that's a really solid role model. I don't know if you want to call him a role model. I don't know, whatever you want to call him, a mentor that he's had throughout the years. That's a solid dude to learn from. Now, Rinat Fakhretdinov, we talked all about Dalby, all these good things, man. Rinat Fakhretdinov, I really believe he is the real deal. I know he's coming off a questionable fight where he kind of gassed out and cost himself a victory, but by kind of slowing down, or I don't even slow down, but he also got capitalized on defensively. Took that draw against Zaleski dos Santos, who talk about fighters that are up in age that are still showcasing their skills and looking to be in phenomenal shape. Another fighter that's well up there, kind of reminds me of Dalby. So listen, I told you guys the line is interesting here. Rinat Fakhretdinov is quite a hefty favorite, and I think the line is off. I think that Dalby is live to get a W here. I think this is a fight that's actually pretty close, if you ask me. Right now, you put Dalby in there with a lot of fighters, and I think that is live to potentially go in there and get a W. Excellent cardio, solid striking skills, great activity. You guys know how he fights, man. He's always jumping around, doing all that herky-jerky stuff. He's throwing a lot of activity, throwing kicks out there. So it will look good if it goes to the judges' scorecards as well for him with the volume. But he is there to be hit. That's one thing I don't like for him in this spot, is he is there to be hit. A lot of times he's so worried about putting his offensive output out there, he's willing to eat a shot or two, and it has cost him before. So that's a problem, because a guy like Rinat Fakhretdinov, he carries some serious power. Okay, he's a well-rounded fighter too. He has good grappling skills, and this was a fight that I was very close with going with the dog. But all in all, it's going to be hard for me to sit here, man, and pick a 39-year-old Dalby, even though we talked about how he's still looking good. Eventually, they have to start to hit a wall, and you got to start seeing them kind of struggling there with the age and whatnot. And Fakhretdinov's 32 years old. He's in his physical prime. And I think the performance that he just had, where his cardio kind of let him down, will actually make him sharper for this fight. That was a learning experience for him in there. He doesn't want to let that happen again, so he'll be even more fine-tuned than ever. I'm very high in the victory he had over Brian Battle. He mauled Brian Battle in there, and I'm very high in Brian Battle. You guys know that. Fan of the show is Brian. You know, we network with Brian Battle. I've talked to him a couple times in IG and whatnot. Awesome dude, and a guy that I've been rooting on since The Ultimate Fighter. And I put some serious merit in that victory. The Kevin Lee one, I don't know about all that, but still, I think Fakhretdinov is the real deal. He's 22-2, and I think that he's going to land some power shots in this fight, and that's going to be the difference. I don't know if he's going to necessarily finish Dalby. Dalby has never been finished, but even still, landing those big strikes, those will solidify rounds, and that will help him take this fight over. Okay, so I'm going to lean more towards the power strikes of Fakhretdinov, more so than the volume of Dalby and the activity and all that, but if Fakhretdinov slows down once again, he could run into some major issues in the third round. But even then, it may be a little bit too late, as I probably would have Fakhretdinov already up in the first 2 rounds. But you never know. Maybe Dalby sneaks in one of those first 2 rounds and he solidifies the fight with the third and wins a decision. All in all, though, I do like Rinat Fakhretdinov, who is, he is currently a minus 310. He opened up as a minus 260 favorite on BetUS, and he's now a minus 310. So we have action coming in on him. I find that baffling, to be honest. I think the value is on Nicolas Dalby. I want to be very clear here, man. For all you guys that are looking for like value type of bets, I think that grabbing a plus 235 line on Dalby's name is not a bad move necessarily, but it's going to be a tough outing for him. But still, that there's value on that line, in my opinion. So I do pick Fakhretdinov to win the fight, but I'm not coughing up over 3-1, almost 3.5-1 odds on him to win this fight. Over to the powerful lightweight division, which, just to be clear, the lightweight division is my favorite weight class. I know I'm always raving about the flyweight division. The lightweight division is my favorite division. It's been from the very, very early days, back when BJ Penn was reigning supreme. It may have something to do with the fact that if I was fighting in the UFC, it's the weight class I'd be fighting in. But most importantly, I think it's just the most common weight. And of course, when I say the most common weight, remember, these fighters are not walking around at 155. They're walking around at in shape, maybe at 170, depending on how much weight they cut, 180 or whatnot. And I think that is really the most common weight for your average man. Your average athletic man. And in this weight division, the fighters don't really lose that power. They still have the speed. I mean, listen, I'm a fan of all weight divisions. I love the featherweight division. I love the welterweight division. But there's a little bit of a difference, welterweight fighter and a lightweight fighter. They lose a little bit of that speed and that athleticism a little bit. You know what I mean? And the lightweight division is just where it's at as far as I'm concerned. You guys, comment below. Let me know, what is your favorite weight class? Are you guys in agreement with me there? All right, so we have Nasrat Haqparast taking on Jared Gordon. This is a good fight here. Jared Gordon, no surprise that he's fighting on this fight card, because following him on IG, one thing I've noticed, he spent a lot of time over in Saudi Arabia. I think he's been doing like some type of training seminars or whatnot, because, if I remember watching the video, they're kind of paying him to be out there and to be doing some type of thing. He's talked about it a little bit on a balcony, how it's kind of lonely out there, but, he's putting in work and whatnot. So he's familiar with the scene out there. He's obviously a dude that has a big heart, and he fights for a lot more than just himself when he's in the cage. There's no question about that. So he'll bring in that spirit to the cage. But he has a tough outing in front of him. Nasrat Haqparast is just 28 years old still. With all the fight experience he has, with all the octagon experience he has, he's still almost a kid. I mean, I don't necessarily want to call him a kid, but he's almost a kid. He's still 28, very young. We're going to see him take some pretty big steps in the octagon, in my opinion, over the next 3 to 4 fights. I think he's really going to start to find himself. He's a fighter that I've always been high on, especially ever since his performance against Mark Diakase. He came into that fight as an underdog. Everybody was very high on Diakase at the time, and I thought that was the fight where Haqparast really started to put things together mentally and understand he's a talented fighter. He's the real deal. And after that victory, he went out there and was stringing off some W's. After that, including that fight, he was 5-1 in those next 6 fights, with the one loss being that early KO that he got hit by Drew Dober. That was on the McGregor-Cerrone card, if you guys remember that. And he was the favorite to win that fight, and he made a mistake and Dober definitely capitalized on that, but Dober's a high caliber striker. His other losses were against Dan Hooker and Bobby Green, both decision losses. Those are high caliber fighters. Everybody else that he's in there with, he's handling business. Okay, he just knocked out Jamie Malarkey in the first round. The Landon Quinones fight, I know that was somewhat competitive, but I thought that was a fight that really showcased what he's about. I mean, he was a step ahead throughout that whole fight, fighting out of the southpaw stance. He's tricky on the feet. I like his striking. He's well-rounded, and kind of reminds us, right, of Kelvin Gastelum. We got to throw that out there because Gastelum, his doppelganger, fighting on this card as well. And they not only do they look similar, they have similar fighting styles to an extent. So where am I going with this fight, and how do I see this fight playing out? I love the fact that Haqparast has a 4-inch reach advantage. I think he has the speed advantage as they look to strike it out. I don't think that Gordon would necessarily have any real success if he goes to his wrestling. I know he has those wrestling skills, but Haqparast has good footwork. He's not really easy to take down, and I think that this fight ends up being kind of a scrap on the feet. I think that these guys go at it, and I like the speed and athleticism of Nasrat Haqparast here. And not only do I think that he wins this fight, I think there is potential for him to get a knockout. All right, he's a dude that has 10 of his 16 victories via knockout. 63% of his wins have been by knockout/TKO. Jared Gordon is a fighter that has been knocked out in 67% of his losses. 4 of his 6 losses have come by way of knockout. And that's not even including the fact that he just got headbutted by Bobby Green and he had his brain rattled up in that fight as well and got put out. But if you remember, Charles Oliveira finished him up. The brutal finish was the Joaquim Silva fight. Ran into a buzzsaw there in the 3rd round. Same thing with Diego Ferreira, finished him up in the 1st round. So he's had some performances where you could question his chin a little bit, and now he's older than ever, obviously. It's his most recent fight, 35 years old, and I think that is a legitimate question mark to have in regards to Jared Gordon. Okay, comes in off a victory, but the victory over Mark Madsen where he had his own knockout. Mark Madsen, the Olympic Greco-Roman wrestler who doesn't have good striking skills offensively or defensively, and good for Gordon for getting that W, but I think that Nasrat Haqparast is a step up in competition compared to Madsen. You guys know I've turned the page on Madsen a long time ago. Both of these fighters putting a good amount of volume out when they're in the cage. Both men right around the 5.5 strikes landed per minute mark. Interestingly enough, Haqparast absorbing a lot more than Gordon absorbs, as Haqparast absorbing 5.25 strikes per minute and Gordon absorbing 3.4 strikes. So defensively, Gordon has been a little bit more defensively refined in there, I guess you could say. But if he does get landed on, his chin is the more questionable chin. And the reason why Haqparast maybe eats a little bit more shots than you were expecting is because he does have a very aggressive style. And I understand, again, I brought up the Dober KO loss. I know we've seen him knocked out before, but all in all, he is a lot more proven. I think that was just a shot that landed flush. I think that his chin is pretty tough. You saw it in the Quinones fight. They were going tit for tat. Haqparast was walking through strikes. He's a younger, fresher fighter. Give me Nasrat Haqparast to be a step ahead in the striking with his speed, and I think that he could find a knockout here. I'll pick him via knockout. Give me him to get a knockout in the 1st or 2nd round, a little bit earlier on in this fight, maybe the under 1.5 on Haqparast. And we'll talk more about this fight potentially on the prop video. But Haqparast opened up on BetUS as a -230. It went the other way there for a little bit. He was a -220, not major line movement. And he's now a -245. So it kind of went back the other way. He's a 2.5 to 1 favorite here. Is there value on that line? I mean, it's a little bit of a high line against a tough dude in Gordon, but I like Haqparast here. And even where that line's at, I would rather be on the Haqparast side.
Michael Vick here at BetUS.com. Get it all. Huge bonuses, great odds, a race book, live in-game betting, and a casino. BetUS, my online sports book and casino.
In the middleweight division, we got Shara, Bullet Magomedov taking on Joilton Lutterbach. Lutterbach taking this fight on short notice as Ihor Peteria did have to withdraw. I think that's a major plus. The UFC was able to keep Magomedov on this card. If Magomedov would have fell off, that would have taken a little bit of the momentum away from this card, quite a bit of momentum away from it, because I think Magomedov is one of the more fun up-and-comers in the fight game or in the UFC right now. He obviously has the look, and it all starts with the eye, right? I mean, the eye's all messed up. I don't even know if he's blind in it or what's going on there, but has kind of a look of a bad guy in a video game, and he has that fighting style too. He's nasty when he's in there. He's respectful. He's not necessarily disrespectful, but he's a dude he's a dog. All right, he's in there to take you out. And as I break down on his opponent, Lutterbach, he has some of that dog in him as well. I've actually enjoyed watching his fights. He's an entertaining fighter. He looks to brawl it out. I've seen some moments before where he's hitting dudes with kind of a low blow type of shot, and the other dude's kind of putting his hand up to kind of give him a high five, like it's okay. And Lutterbach's not even looking at that. He's coming right back, looking to finish his opposition. So he has that dog in him too. I think he'll meet Magomedov there with that energy. Lutterbach is an aggressive striker, but he's not the most technically sound. I think Magomedov is going to have a massive advantage technically there. But you also note that if they go to war, I do believe that Lutterbach is a fighter that throws some heat, and he puts some nasty shots out there, and you never know it's a fight game, so don't be necessarily shocked if you see Lutterbach land some strikes in the feet. But all in all, I want to be clear, Magomedov is the much more refined striker and is much more likely to find his own finish there. I mean, he's a very talented striker. That's his bread and butter. That's his background. Now, the question marks we have in regards to Magomedov's game has to be his grappling. All right, we've seen him struggle there before in the cage. In his big victory over Bruno Silva, we did see him on his back. I don't know if I would say quite a bit. He was down on his back though throughout that fight here and there. I mean, still did enough to win that decision, and he landed some damaging strikes. But Bruno Silva, a well-rounded fighter. I don't know if he's necessarily known for his grappling, but he has skills there. He was able to get Magomedov down. I'm curious if Lutterbach is going to be able to replicate any of that. And even if he gets him down, I'm curious if he's going to be able to hold him there for a significant amount of time. And I'm not favoring that to be the case, because I could see in some wild exchanges Lutterbach changing levels, which he does often on tape, and dropping down and kind of falling into a takedown. But he's an aggressive striker even down on the mat, and I could see him kind of trying to open up, and I could see Magomedov getting back up to his feet often throughout the fight, or just even having success keeping it standing, stuffing some takedowns. So I'm not overly concerned with Magomedov's takedown defense and his grappling. Also, of course, with Magomedov settling in more and more as a professional MMA fighter, now with 12 victories, 30 years old in his physical prime, having a fight in the octagon under his belt and whatnot, his takedown defense is going to get better and better. So I think he's even sharper there, and that will lead him to be able to open up more so on the feet with his striking. And I think that Shara Magomedov is going to get the better of the UFC newcomer Lutterbach in a best case scenario for Lutterbach. Obviously he gets a W here, but if he can even just put on a fun fight and show a solid showing of himself, he'll get another opportunity for taking this fight on short notice. So I think that he should look to continue his style of fighting, which I've seen from him, in other promotions, which is being a fun fighter to watch, an aggressive fighter, a fan-pleasing type of fighter. And he's a fighter that at 31 years old, he already has 49 pro fights, and he's fought in some big promotions before. Okay, he's had a lot of professional striking matches, especially as of recently, but he's fought over at Brave. He's fought in Glory on the kickboxing scene. He's fought in RFA. I believe fought over in the PFL. I believe he's fought over in the KSW as well. Fought Sedriques du Plessis, got knocked out there by Sedriques, the middleweight champion. So he's been in there with some dudes. Okay, so I don't think that the spotlight gets to him too much. I just think that Shara Magomedov is just a dangerous striker and is going to be the superior fighter in this fight. So I have Shara Magomedov getting the W here. Does he get that knockout? We've seen Lutterbach finish twice before. We just mentioned the Sedriques fight, but all in all, when you think about the fact he's been in there almost 50 times and has only been knocked out twice, and one of them being against the UFC middleweight champion, I don't really see too much of a deficiency in his durability and whatnot. But it's hard to say. I think there's going to be a high pace in this fight. So you guys kind of got me tied up here. I don't know if do I want to take Magomedov via KO? I'll be clear. I'm on Magomedov to get the job done here. He opened up at minus 215 on BetUS. He's now minus 250. Line's getting up there a little bit, but I still like Magomedov even at the minus 250 line, and at minus 215, that was pretty solid there. That was quite a bit ago when the fight was kind of announced right at first. And screw it, I will go with Magomedov to get the knockout. All right, I'm settling in for Magomedov to get a knockout in this fight. The more I think about it, it's going to be a high-paced fight, and he's a sharpshooter. He's dangerous. I'll say he finds the mark and gets Lutterbach out of there in the second round. We got a great fight here in the light heavyweight division. Johnny Walker making the walk once again, taking out Volkan Oezdemir, who comes in off a big victory. Perennial ranked light heavyweight fighter is Volkan Oezdemir. He's been around for a while now. Remember, he bursted on the scene, started just knocking dudes out left and right, was doing the whole no time thing, pointing to his watch. There was a lot of hype behind him leading up to an eventual title shot, right? Had that eventual title shot against DC, where the grappling of DC was just much too much for him. Before that, he had 2 knockout victories over Misha Cirkunov and Jimmy Manawa, who were 2 very respected fighters at the time. In fact, I believe he came in as dogs in both of those fights. I believe for sure against Misha Cirkunov, though. Had a victory against OSP in his debut at the time, which was a big victory. A younger OSP who had a lot of respect, fought for the belt as well. Now, he's taken some losses since that title loss as well. Lost to Anthony Smith, where his grappling cost him once again. Lost a decision to Dominic Reyes, and then was knocked out by Yuri Prohaska, and lost to Magomed Ankalaev and Nikita Krylov. If you're catching on, one thing that is common with all those opponents is that those fighters are high-level fighters. Those are respectable names in the game. Okay, so Volkan's been carving his teeth out against some of the best fighters in the game. And we saw that play into fruition when he took on Bogdan Guskov, the UFC newcomer, who has since shown that he's legitimate. And Volkan just outclassed him down on the mat, showing that he's been putting in a lot of work with his grappling, which was one of his flaws when he first came into the UFC. So showing to be a more well-rounded fighter, a true professional that's been working on his overall craft. And that's an aspect that could help him in this fight, because Johnny Walker, we've seen him struggle with his grappling at times. And I think that could be a potential edge for, look at it, there it goes. There could be a potential benefit for Oezdemir in the grappling department there. And as they mix things up, maybe we see Oezdemir marching forward and changing levels, and then maybe securing some of those takedowns and working some ground and pound. But throwing that curveball at you guys, I don't really see Oezdemir holding him down for a significant amount of time. I think this is more of a high-paced fight on the feet, and I love the athleticism and power that Johnny Walker possesses. And the more I dive into this fight, although it's a dangerous one and it's really a hard fight to pick, this is kind of a spot that I like for Johnny Walker. I do, because I think that Volkan Oezdemir will entertain the striking exchanges for a good amount of time. Even if he looks to change levels here and there, Volkan will march forward with his more orthodox, like Dutch kickboxing style. He'll look to land his own strikes, and Johnny Walker will have plenty of time to land a knockout in this fight with the athleticism, his quick twitch athleticism, his rangy type of striking. And he's dangerous as hell there. You guys know that. And talk about Oezdemir bursting on the scene with his knockouts and making a name for himself. Johnny Walker did the exact same thing, maybe in a little bit of a different way. He had some nasty knockouts in the clinch and whatnot. But remember, right, he came into the UFC, fought in Dana White's Contender Series, actually had a decision victory over Enrique da Silva, came into the UFC, knocked out Khalil Roundtree. That was the one that was in the clinch, knocked out Justin Ledet within 15 seconds, the boxer Justin Ledet, knocked out Misha Cirkunov, another common opponent there. And when you take a look at his losses, they're against very, very respectable names as well. Corey Anderson, Nikita Krylov, Thiago Santos, Jamal Hill, okay, Magomed Ankalaev, another common opponent. Okay, so both of these guys have been putting in work. This is an awesome fight. I am settling in with Johnny Walker to get the job done here, and I think that he's live to get a knockout. I'm going to say Johnny Walker gets the finish in this fight. I think that Volkan will be a willing partner to entertain the fans, and he'll be looking to get Johnny out of there. They're going to clash, and they're going to go to war. They both have histories of going to war, and I think that Walker is going to land something nasty in this fight. And he's been looking very mentally sharp when he's in there, even in some of his losses as of recently, right? The Magomed Ankalaev. Ankalaev, in my opinion, is the uncrowned king of this division. So take that for what you will. I love the energy Johnny Walker had going into that fight and after. Okay, this guy is lacking no confidence. He's hitting on all cylinders mentally and physically. Give me Johnny Walker to get the job done. This line has been dipping. So you opened up at -150. It's now pick'em odds at -110, -115, 110 over at BetUS. I like Johnny Walker. I like Johnny Walker to get the job done. I say he finds a knockout. In the welterweight division, we got Kelvin Gastelum taking on Daniel D-Rod Rodriguez. This is a huge fight for D-Rod. Of course, Gastelum, a household name. Daniel Rodriguez, I know he's a very good friend of a fighter that I talk with frequently, Sasha Palatnikov, ex-UFC fighter, a dude that's been making some buzz over in the karate combat scene. You take note of what Sasha's doing. He's looking to make some noise over there in the karate combat world. I know he has a fight coming up on the horizon, but I know he's very tight with D-Rod. And, I know that D-Rod is very mentally prepared for an opportunity like this. I know that he is getting in some serious work. And, a victory over Kelvin Gastelum carries serious weight. Even though Gastelum comes off a very suspect performance against Sean Brady, just the way he looked throughout that fight. I know that Sean Brady's a very high caliber grappler and he's a solid fighter, but I thought that Gastelum looked very suspect in that fight. And it was interesting because he came in off a W over Chris Curtis, and I thought that he looked phenomenal against Chris Curtis. I thought that was a fight where he looked like he had his head on his shoulders, and mentally he was really on point. So you never really know what you're getting from Kelvin Gastelum, right? He's been bouncing around in different weight classes. Again, this is a fight taking place in the welterweight division, which is where a lot of people have felt for years that Kelvin Gastelum should have settled in, right? He's had a lot of success up in the middleweight division, but his frame up in the middleweight division, it's almost interesting that he's had the success that he's had. Very undersized, kind of like Frankie Edgar-esque. But Gastelum is a dog, and when he's mentally there, he's there. Nasty striker fighting out of the southpaw stance, good grappling. When he's all there, man, great cardio, everything really going good for him. So if Kelvin Gastelum shows up for this fight really looking to get a W, and if he shows up and he's completely motivated to get the job done here, I got Kelvin Gastelum. If he looks like he looked in his last fight, D-Rod is an absolute dog, and this fight could play out very closely. And you see Gastelum here getting in work with Adam Fugit, who looked pretty damn good in his fight that just took place last weekend, training over at Team Fight Ready in Scottsdale, Arizona. I'm going to say that Gastelum shows up motivated after taking that last loss. He's traveling planet Earth here to go fight. I think that he'll be motivated to go out there and make it worthwhile. I'm going to say Gastelum gets the job done. D-Rod is an absolute dog, has really good striking skills. He's tough in the clinch and all that. I mean, he's a dog. He shows up to fight. But I just think that Gastelum is a little bit on the next level when he's hitting on all cylinders. Also, Gastelum still is only 32 years old, has more in the tank. D-Rod, 37 years old. He's getting up there in age. I know he's doing stuff outside the cage as well, and a positive light. He's working on different things. They have a podcast. Him and Sasha Palatnikov have a podcast. Comes off 3 losses in a row because the whole fight world had him losing against Li Jiang. That was one of the more questionable decisions we've ever seen. That was that fight that was swapped up last second when Khamzat Chimaev was supposed to be taking on Nate Diaz and all that shuffle happened. After that, he got finished by Neil Magny in the third, kind of slowed down at the end of that fight, and then he was just finished up in the first by Ian Gary. Gary is a very high caliber fighter, but still, I got to lean Kelvin Gastelum here. I'm going to say that Gastelum is just a little bit of a step ahead. I'll say Gastelum wins a decision, and D-Rod will have some moments as well. But I just think that Gastelum will be a little bit of a step ahead. And Gastelum right now, he opened up at minus 220, and he's now a minus 250 favorite. So he's a 2.5 to 1 favorite. He's a pretty hefty favorite. That line's getting up there. I think you would want to be on it a little bit earlier. Not really crazy, but the minus 250 line, it's getting up there. If D-Rod really shows up and he's hitting on all cylinders, this is a fight that could play out closely. You have a lot of moving parts, like I said, with the way that Gastelum looked in his last fight. But stylistically, D-Rod is different than Sean Brady. So it helps Gastelum there. We've seen Gastelum struggle with grapplers at times, making mental mistakes. If you remember when Hermanson snatched up a heel hook within seconds, we've seen Gastelum kind of freeze up and make some mistakes in his fights. D-Rod's a different fighter. He's going to be there looking to brawl it out with you, and Gastelum will have time to put his head on his shoulders. Give me Gastelum to win this fight via decision. I absolutely love this fight. It's a crazy clash in the heavyweight division. 2 fighters, like I said in the intro, they don't talk much. There's not really a lot of buzz behind their personalities going into their fights. These guys just deliver, okay? And they're very high caliber fighters, high caliber striking machines. This fight's going to be a fun one. You guys know I'm one of those dudes that enjoys the shit talking and all the backstory to a fight. I like drama and all that, but when you have this type of matchup, it doesn't even matter. Okay, now if they did have some backstory going into it, it would make it even a little bit more exciting, but you don't even need it necessarily with a matchup like this. So Pavlovich comes in off a huge missed opportunity in the sense that fight with him and Tom Aspinall was really for, in my opinion, for who is the best heavyweight fighter in the world right now. And I know you could mix John Jones right in there, but John Jones has been struggling to stay active throughout the years. And listen, I said John Jones is still the pound for pound best fighter just from his resume throughout all these years. But I'm talking about right now, you lock two men in the cage. I was saying that the winner of the Aspinall-Pavlovich fight, I would have them over John Jones. And in fact, I don't know. I think I would have, even going into that fight at prior, I had both of them over John Jones regardless, even the winner or loser, both of them. Sergey Pavlovich is just ridiculously dangerous. And just because he got knocked out in that fight against Aspinall, don't forget what he can do offensively. That was a fight where he was willing to engage and he was willing to go out on his shield, looking to get that finish himself, and he got caught. And Tom Aspinall, who is, in my opinion, the best heavyweight fighter on planet Earth, you mix the jiu-jitsu skills that he has, the fluidity in his movement. He moves like a middleweight at the size that he's at. I mean, Tom Aspinall is a freak, and I can't wait to see him get more and more opportunities to become a household name in the game and to become a star of the sport, representing England over there. But that was a missed opportunity for Pavlovich to establish himself as the best heavyweight in the world and setting up for a fight with Jones down the line, even though Jones has his own stuff going on. But Pavlovich is going to be very, very hungry to bounce back with the victory here. I think we're going to see vintage Pavlovich, what we've been seeing from him for years. He's going to storm out and he's going to look to starch Alexander Volkov. Now, that could be a problem here if Volkov is able to weather the storm and have this fight creep into the later rounds. Okay, Volkov's a dangerous striker and could potentially counter Pavlovich and get his own first-round knockout on him, similarly to what Aspinall just did. But I don't see that being as likely. Volkov is a fighter that's a very refined striker, but he's not a dude that's like a quick twitch, one-pop strikeout artist. He's a guy that really gets into rhythm and then will absolutely dominate you. He's a fighter that has a lot more fight experience than a Pavlovich, right? He's gone deep into fights in championship rounds. Pavlovich is a fighter that's hardly ever left the first round. So if Pavlovich doesn't get Volkov out of there in the first round or early in the second round, I think it's going to be a problem for him. And the longer the fight goes, I do favor Volkov. With that being said, all in all, I favor Pavlovich to get the job done here. He's just a little bit more quick twitched. He's more compact and athletic. And I think he's going to find the mark early on and probably get the knockout in the first round. I'm going to take Pavlovich to get a first round knockout here. Volkov has shown to be durable throughout the years, but we've also seen Volkov drop the ball early in fights before Tom Aspinall snatched up that sub in the first round, was able to grapple him there. Another aspect of this fight is that although Sergey Pavlovich doesn't showcase his grappling, I know that he's gotten a lot of high caliber training in regards to his grappling, training with guys like Steve Mako over the American Top Team throughout the years. And he has the athleticism to shine there, I do believe. But I think we'll see a little bit more of this heavy overhands, heavy strikes, and not just overhands. He has refined boxing. All right, he throws a nice straight jab. He's a freak athlete. And kind of reminds me, do you remember like what in Looney Tunes, there was like those pit bulls? Kind of like that, those pit bull looking dudes. You guys know what I'm talking about. It was like a dog, like a gray dog with the spike collar. He reminds me of one of those types of dudes. If he was an animal, this dude's a jacked up pit bull with the spike collar around his neck. I mean, this guy is a freak. And I'm going to side with Pavlovich to bounce back in the win column, which will be great for the division because he could look to make some buzz and get a potential rematch against Aspinall down the line or fight a John Jones potentially, which maybe don't hold your breath because Jones is probably going to fight Stipe and then retire, even though he's saying he'll give Aspinall a shot if he shows out against Blades. I don't know if he makes a bigger name for himself. I don't think Jones wants that smoke with these young guns. But and when I say young guns, just fighters that are more young in the fight game and just have been more active. All right, so give me Sergey Pavlovich to get a first round knockout. I've been cage side for Pavlovich's fights before. I saw what he did to Tai Tuivasa. I mean, I wasn't that far from the cage, man. And when you were there, it was very different than just watching it on TV. When you were listening to the thud of the crowd, because the crowd got very quiet because everybody was rooting on Tai Tuivasa. And when they saw that he was getting mollywopped, everybody kind of quieted up and was in shock. And you just heard the thuds throughout the arena. And this guy hits differently. All right. So he opened up as a minus 205, a little bit of up and down here. He's a minus 220 now. And, you got to be careful there. If he doesn't get that first round knockout, you got to be careful later on in the fight. Volkov taking it over. Stay tuned for the prop video. Maybe that's one that we talk about, maybe targeting Pavlovich in the first round or more of unders on this fight and whatnot. And that's a great fight.
This video is brought to you by BetUS Sportsbook and Casino.
Here we go, boys. We got the main event. Ikram Aliskerov taking on Robert Whittaker. Whittaker, the former UFC middleweight champion of the world, a very, very established fighter. Now, I found this very interesting. First and foremost, Robert Whittaker was quite the underdog against Khamzat Chimaev. He was like almost a 2-1 underdog, so somewhere right around there, which was kind of crazy to me. I thought that was a fight that should have been much closer. And then as this new match was put together, we take a look at the betting line, which I'm gonna tell you guys the betting line right off the rip, without letting you guys know which way I'm going one way or another, because I'm very torn on this fight, and I may even change my mind as we break this fight down. Okay, there is a very slight lean on Robert Whittaker. He is right now a -135 favorite. The comeback on Aliskerov right around +105. He's a minuscule underdog. This is a fight that the books have capped very closely, which is interesting because Aliskerov is a fighter that has a lot of similar buzz to what a Khamzat Chimaev has. They fought each other, and Khamzat came out supreme in that fight. He knocked out Aliskerov. That fight was a while ago, but Aliskerov has looked absolutely phenomenal since having that showcase on Dana White's Contender Series and then being signed by the UFC. If you guys remember, he got the first round submission on DWCS against Mario Souza, and then he had 2 first-round knockouts since he's been fighting in the UFC. He's 2-0, knocked out Phil Hawes and Warley Alves. 2 fighters that have respectable names, but if you really dive into some of their recent performances, especially and throughout the years, they've been kind of frail. They've been finished up often, but you still got to give credit to Aliskerov, especially in that knockout he had, well, in both of them, but the knockout that he had over Phil Hawes was devastating, like flatlining him. But the way that he finished up Warley Alves, even more impressive if you ask me. The way he hit him with that flying knee, the way he was measuring up to land that shot, it kind of shows you that he's a sniper with his striking, and he's really seeing things on another level right now. And we've seen Whittaker hurt pretty bad recently. Remember, Dricus du Plessis put it on him in his second to last fight, where he was finished up in the second round. He bounced back with a solid victory over Paulo Costa. Paulo Costa's not a bad fighter, man, but you guys know I've been a little bit more down on him than some of you guys. I'm not really too high on Costa. I feel he kind of just shows up to get a paycheck and make a little bit of buzz. I mean, I don't know. I shouldn't say that. He goes to war here and there, but recently, I don't know. That last fight, man, he wasn't even there. So, yeah, Whittaker went out there and got a victory over Costa, but what's going to happen when he clashes with an Aliskerov? Is he going to be vulnerable to being hurt in there and maybe finished up once again? He's 33 years old, but he has 32 pro fights, and he's a fighter that has gone through many wars, even dating back to his fights with Yoel Romero back in the day, fighting for the title, right, multiple times, going to war in those fights. He's taken a lot of damage throughout the years, and he's given a lot of damage too. I've been a big fan of Whittaker ever since he was on The Ultimate Fighter. I was very high on him back then, and even though he's such a quick twitch and ferocious striker, what some people don't realize is he has a wrestling background as well. And one thing that I've been hearing going into this fight is that he's been getting in work with a dude. I'm sorry I don't have the name in front of me right now. And that's not him, I don't believe. But I've been hearing this buzz about this fighter, a wrestler out of Australia. If anybody wants to elaborate that in the comment section, a dude that's preparing for the Olympics and has aspirations to become a gold medalist. I don't know how realistic those are, but Whittaker is getting in some serious wrestling, and he has already proven wrestling skills. Aliskerov, he's a well-rounded fighter. He could grapple as well, but Whittaker, a much more proven fighter throughout the years and has a much longer resume going later into fights. Aliskerov has a lot of earlier finishes too. So what is Aliskerov going to look like in the later rounds, in rounds 4 and 5, in those championship rounds? That is one thing that kind of leans me towards Whittaker's way. I'll be transparent with you guys. I've been back and forth. Like I said here, I was settling in with an Aliskerov pick, but I'm flopping over to Whittaker. I like the fact that Whittaker has just a more proven resume. I think that as the fight picks up to the mid and later rounds, I think Whittaker can take over this fight. And I think that he's a very high fight IQ fighter. He has a lot of tools in his bag. He's a very well-rounded fighter. And I need to see more from Ikram Aliskerov besides just 2 knockout victories over questionable names at the points that they were at when they got finished. So I am settling with Robert Whittaker. I think that's the more professional pick here. Now, my gut does tell me, that there's realistic potential that Ikram Aliskerov gets a knockout before the second round ever ends. Maybe he finds that strike there, but I will settle in with the Robert Whittaker pick. And I could also see Robert Whittaker landing his own finish in this fight. Let me just also note, we brought up that Khamzat Chimaev uppercut knockout that he landed on Aliskerov. Whittaker is a very dangerous striker, and I could see him potentially getting a finish in this fight as well. My gut kind of tells me, though, that this fight actually goes to a decision where Whittaker's kind of piecing him up a little bit late, and maybe we got to see how Ikram holds up late in fights, but maybe he's game enough to survive, and we go to the judges' scorecards, and Whittaker wins a unanimous decision, 3-2 rounds there, maybe even 4-1. I'll say Aliskerov wins maybe a 1 round, 1 or 2, but Whittaker solidifies at least 3 rounds, maybe 4. So give me Robert Whittaker to get a huge victory and to once again be making buzz to fight for the belt. Okay, obviously there's a lot going on in the division. Israel Adesanya and the champion Dricus du Plessis have that fight lined up, and there's just, if you guys want to talk about that real quick, there's a lot going on in this division. At the top of the middleweight division right now, as mentioned, we have the championship fight there. Sean Strickland coming off another victory. A lot of people thought that he should never lost the belt, so he's right there in the mix. Sean Strickland versus Robert Whittaker would be a hell of a fight. I don't know if that's something that they put together. Nasruddin Amavov is coming off a big main event victory. Jared Cannonier is definitely pushed off to the outskirts now. He lost all that buzz with him being up there in age, and that's problems for them. Khamzat Chimaev had food poisoning. He'll be back. There was rumors about retirement, but he'll be back. And then Brendan Allen is on quite the win streak too. So you got a lot going on in this division, but Sean Strickland, Brendan Allen, Nasruddin Amavov, the winner of this fight will all be buzzing and making noise to eventually get an opportunity to fight the winner of Dricus and Israel Adesanya. So a lot of moving parts. It's exciting. The middleweight division's exciting towards the top of it right now. Not the most deep top to bottom, but the ranked action is exciting right now. So I've always been hard in the middleweight division, but I like what's going on in the top 10 right now. All right, so give me Robert Whittaker to win a unanimous decision. All right, guys, I have to hit you up with some deep parting words as we depart from a card like this. Before we get into those, something I was thinking about the other day, but before I get into the deep thoughts, just note we are powered by BetUS, and if you sign up through the link in the top of the description of this video, you'll get a 125% match on your first 3 deposits, and I will also give you a gift. Please let me know if you do sign up through that link, and if you want to work with me for my official plays, reach out to me, whether it's through IG, Twitter, or email. Shoot me a message, and I'll give you further details there. Appreciate you guys so much. Please smash that like button, subscribe if you guys haven't already. Now, this was something I was thinking about the other day, and something I've thought about throughout my entire life. You guys know when you get like those deep thoughts, those deep feelings of something, it's kind of almost hard to verbalize, but it's almost like a feeling, right? I think there's something to it, right? You ever like woke up on a Saturday afternoon and it's a nice day, the weather's good, and you got a solid day lined up. You don't even necessarily know what the plans are, but you just know it's going to be a good day one way or another. And you go outside and nature is looking better than ever, and just everything, man. The sky's looking good, the road's smelling nice. Those are the days, man, that you live for. So take advantage of those types of days. I was thinking maybe there's something to those days, right? It's probably your body is hitting on all cylinders and you're feeling really good chemically and whatnot too. It's probably enhancing the fact that that's a good day, right? Because you could even have days that are a good day on paper. You're free and you have fun plans, but you're still not really feeling as excited about the day as those days. So that kind of coincides with taking care of yourself, all right? Taking care of your health, eating healthy. Don't wear your body out, man. Try to maybe slow it down with the drinking. That's something I tell myself here and there as well. I'm not like a serious drinker, but I'm a weekend warrior. But sometimes maybe I'm overdoing it, and then you're ruining the next day after that. Something you got to kind of look in the mirror and tell yourself once in a while, because you're ruining beautiful days, right? The following days. Because I'll tell you what, a night after drinking too much, that next day is definitely not one of the days that I was just referring to. Okay, so but let me just also give you the other side of the coin. Got to enjoy yourself too. So if you're putting in good work, you're taking care of yourself. Those days that I'm talking about that they have that buzz and that feeling and that smell to them. It's hard to even put your finger on what it is, but those days that are just awesome. Sometimes you're enjoying yourself a little bit too. And maybe you're kind of dabbling, maybe drinking a little bit or whatever too, and you're excited. You get a new little bottle of alcohol with the boys, and you're going out. You're headed to the beach. You have the cooler filled with some cold brews or whatever is your cup of tea. As long as it's within reason. Hopefully, you guys ain't doing nothing crazy out there. But whether you smoke a little, pot, whatever. But enjoy yourself, but just don't overdo it. Make sure you're able to wake up the next day feeling decent, feeling good, and just enjoying every day, because you only have so many of these days on earth. So I hope all you guys are taking full advantage of all of them, and I hope you guys are living healthy lives. That's what I'll say. All right. You guys know I always wish you guys the best. Everyone that tunes into this show weekly or even just periodically and shows support, it means a lot to me. And obviously I got love for you guys. So on that note, I hope you guys all have a profitable event. Hope you guys all have a great fight week, a great weekend. Signing out. Teller.
Welcome to the show. This the MMA fortune teller. Yeah.
The MMA fortune teller.
The teller.